call to order this regular meeting of the Raton City Commission. Michael Lang, could we have roll call, please?
Mayor Mance.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Sagata.
Present.
Commissioner Chavez.
Present.
Commissioner Giacomo.
Present.
Commissioner Schuster.
Present.
Thank you. Would you all please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you all for coming out this evening. A couple of things to make note of. All city offices will be closed on Monday, February 19th, in observance of President's Day. Our next regular commission meeting will be Tuesday, February 27th at 6 p.m. here in the chambers. We also have on Monday, February 19th at the Schuler Theater, starting at 7 o'clock, the candidate forum for the upcoming election. Michael Ann, you want to say anything about that? Or?
Just that we invite people to attend, and if they can't attend, it will be broadcast live on KRTN also. So that is, once again, Monday at 7 p.m. at the Schuler Theater.
All right, thank you. So that is Monday, 7 p.m. at the Schuler or on KRTN. Commissioner Schuster, I believe you have an announcement.
I just want to remind healthcare providers that this coming Saturday, February 17th, there is an in-service by Dr. Phil Palmer, who is a doctor of physical therapy, and he will talk on the neuropsychology of pain. And it's about an hour and a half. It'll start at 11 a.m. We'll bring in some lunch, and it should be a good in-service. It's very informative. People are free to call me or Rocky Mountain Physical Therapy. I'm hosting my Casita Allegra Speech Therapy, Rocky Mountain Physical Therapy, the City of Raton, and it will be at the Center for Sustainability.
All right, thank you. Thank you. We've now come to item 5, comments from the general public, and we do have some folks in the audience today. If you're here to speak on a specific item in the agenda, I ask that you wait until that item comes up, but if there's anything else anyone would like to bring up at this time, this is the time to do it. Seeing none, we will move on to the business portion of the agenda. Item A, approval of the January 23rd, 2018 regular commission meeting minutes and January 30, 2018 special commission meeting minutes. You've all had copies in your packet. Time to go over them. Are there any questions, comments, additions, deletions?
I found no errors. I'll move to approve both meeting minutes for January 23rd and January 30th special commission meeting.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for the meetings of January 23rd and January 30th. Is there any other comments? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Items B and C on your agenda is a presentation of the fiscal year 17 audit report and then our deliberation and acceptance of that. We are in the understanding that the CPAs are en route. They got a little delayed, so we are going to move those items down the list at this time. And we will move now to item D, deliberate and act on MOA between the City of Raton and the Center for Sustainable Community for operation of a community kitchen at the Raton Convention Center. Mr. Barry.
Mayor Pro Tem and Commission, it has been a part of our plan, and we've been working with some strategic community partners to develop a community kitchen. It's our hope that we can use that to encourage small food businesses to develop here in Raton and grow into larger food businesses, create jobs and economic development in Raton. our community partners are a very important element of this. Jeff Peterson from the center has worked with us on that and really is responsible for grants that has funded equipment in the amount of about $26,000, and that's being installed in the kitchen right now. The city had otherwise undertaking a general update and remodeling of the kitchen, so I think we have a strong partnership here. We hope to formalize that through this memorandum of understanding or of agreement, and then what that would do is establish a process of management of the kitchen, number one, and then that management would then deal with various members or renters of the facility, those small businesses that we are trying to incentivize. So we do have Mr. Peterson present, who has been involved in the project now for some time, and I think he's available to answer your questions or give you a presentation of a little more specific information on the kitchen. Whatever we're doing.
Jeff, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. Any specific questions on that MOA before I just talk about a few updates?
Yeah.
So we do, I did want to present a little Valentine I bought for my girlfriend from our first tenant of the commercial kitchen. So Bernadette Apodaca is working in the kitchen right now. She's making candy. She made pinon brittles and so forth, and caramels that she's been selling at Enchanted Grounds. And now she's making these fabulous candy sculptures, working in conjunction with Enchanted Grounds. So it's this great little partnership going on,
Pass him. Don't forget to.
where Bernadette has been making these cakes. And so Bernadette is just sharp as a tack and very excited to be working with her. And she's got a lot of ideas. So it's like the perfect example of the type of person this community kitchen, commercial kitchen can help. And a lot of enthusiasm and talent right there represented by Bernadette. So
Her company's called Sugar Me.
Sugar Me, yep.
Cool.
Yeah. And of course, the growing season is starting and the asparagus is starting to come in, and Lucy's going to be in there soon with doing the pickled asparagus and so forth. So the kitchen's coming along. We've got, basically we have some equipment yet to be fully installed. One thing I realized is some of these major pieces of equipment were going to be too tall on some of the desk tables in there. So I did have a little bit of Leeds money left over from one of the grants, and we're getting some equipment stands, and those are coming in this week. Paul Jenkins helped process that order from Raton. So we've used up all of our Leeds money. I think between the money, there's a $26,000 from USDA and another $15,000 from New Mexico Leeds. That's all gone into this kitchen. And then I made a presentation in Santa Fe to New Mexico Economic Development as part of a jobs creation program a week ago, and the center won an award there. So we've got some money to help cover salary, which was a nice relief. So this will help us really, I'll be able to dedicate a little more time without having to worry about the doors staying open at the center. So that funds us through June. And that program is not only for the commercial kitchen, but it's for developing what's called a remote worker program. So we're working with Raton to identify remote working jobs in the nation that somebody from Raton can work from home and do like call center customer service. And then some kind of solopreneur work. This is that new economy of people who are very mobile and do a lot of, let's say, coding or web design and that kind of thing. And we now have an office set up in the center for them to utilize on temporary or full-time basis. This is that partnership with Fat Pipe Albuquerque that I mentioned once before, where we have a relationship with really the leading co-working space in the state that is now set up Fat Pipe Raton as an official organization for their network of collaboration centers. So a lot going on at the center around job building. I did mention to the New Mexico Economic Development when I was down there that next in line is to go through a process to get us certified as an official business incubator, and that was just all smiles. I got an email 2 days later, when can we come up and visit and see Raton and what's going on? So a lot of good energy there with New Mexico Economic Development. And they really like this kitchen and the concept we've got going forward with this kitchen. So I hope the MOA meets with your approval. We're definitely ready to take charge and get going with our team members. Got some team members represented here who are definitely a key part of making that happen.
Tell you what, 2015, when I first went to I think it was January, February, went to that little training that talked about starting commercial community kitchens in an area, and it felt like a huge project, and I convinced Lucy Romero to jump on board and be the director of the board for this project, and I'm so glad, Jeff, that you have helped us and took this project on and made it work. And everybody who's been on this for the last 3 years has worked hard, and I'm very proud at where it's at. I'm very proud of everyone who's worked hard on it. So thank you.
Right. Thank you all.
Yeah. One question I have, Jeff, involving the kitchen manager.
Yes.
You know, being in the same kind of food industry with the senior centers,
Yeah.
we have to have a food manager over the whole operation that's in charge of all of the food inventory, upkeep of the building, and regulations and that. Does this person have to be a certified person to that
I
extent?
just passed my test. I took the
Did you?
fluid sickness
Very
test.
good.
So, and one of my previous experiences just before Raton was helping start up a commercial kitchen making marijuana chocolate in Trinidad. So we set up one from scratch, all the equipment, all the procedures, and layers of procedures, of course, in that industry. So I'm ready to go and take this on.
Cool. Any other questions for Jeff?
No.
Okay, seeing no other questions, I'll take a motion to accept this MOA between the City of Raton and the Center for Sustainable Community for the operation of a community kitchen at the convention center.
Okay, I will make that motion to accept the MOA.
Second it.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further questions? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item E, deliberate and act on an MOA between the City of Raton and Raton Local Food Coalition for a community food hub on the former El Portal site. Mr. Berry.
Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor and Commission, this is a very similar proposed action for the consideration of the Commission. We do have a group also present at the meeting tonight, and they have come to the city, and they are interested in a couple of things. Number one is a community garden a type of setup. As you know, we've had a community garden on a private piece of property in Raton for several years, and that project has really grown, and we've had a lot of interest. And then related to that is a farmer's market, which has also grown in popularity. That's been located on First Street, and there was a change of ownership in that location, the private property where the garden had taken place. So we had discussed if there was maybe a location that the city could help with, and I had suggested to the group that we might look at the El Portal site. That's the site where the El Portal Hotel was located. Of course, we had a significant fire, and in the course of cleaning that up, there was an exchange of, I think, landfill and disposal fees of debris in exchange for the property. So that's a piece of property I think that we've planned on bringing to the public and asking the public how would we like to see that tract develop. But we haven't really developed that plan fully. We haven't got that far. We've really concentrated on the First Street area, and the First Street project will continue for a little while. But we did talk about this site as potentially the site for the community garden and potentially the site for farmers market. And so we have some of the folks involved here. I would hope they have a spokesperson who would come forward again and give you facts on that and answer any questions. But we are calling this a Raton Local Food Coalition for a community food hub, and we'll just call that the coalition. That's a lengthy name. In the memorandum of agreement that you have, you can see that about half of that site, 22,500 square feet, would be dedicated under the agreement to the community garden, to potentially a farmer's market. And in the sketch that you have, you see in that area, there's a proposal for a future permanent structure, a greenhouse. And so that's a big step up on food production, and it can all kind of tie together. If we get to a level of commercial production of vegetables or fruits and vegetables or even flowers, and we tie that together with the food production that we're talking about at the community kitchen, we're hoping to incentivize, again, local businesses, startups, small food businesses, economic development, and hopefully create a couple of jobs. So very similar type of agreements. We would do this on a year-to-year basis. As we get into permanent structures, such as a greenhouse, we would have to look at a term that's longer than a year. But this is the initial agreement, and so we've talked about a term of, through this calendar year. And I would ask if there's a spokesperson wishing to represent the coalition.
I'll speak briefly. I've been working with Steph Jensen and Dave Stafford and Randy on the concept of what we're proposing, and the basics of it is what we'd like to get done is we'd like to understand the buy-in from the city commission to really allow us to go out and find some funding. And so to do that, we need some type of official sort of okay to let us go out and find the funding to make this really happen, because it is a pretty significant project. So we hadn't had time as a group to meet and review this MOA, so we do have some questions that I think there's some modifications we'd like to go through as a group to represent this MOA. But certainly the general idea right now is that the Raton Intermediate School has the old raised beds from the previous community garden have moved over to Raton Intermediate School to help them start a school garden. And so the community gardeners are going to be working with them, working out of those gardens for now. The goal will be by next year to have a fully designed, and working in place so that the community garden and farmers market are operating in the El Portal lot. And that we would find new beds with new grant money so that we would leave behind a functioning school garden for RAS. Again, building this great pathway for food in the community. I guess there is some discussion now that perhaps the farmers market could locate on El Portal this year, and that the city would participate in helping with some gravel or something to lay out an area that would be satisfactory and, for visitors and for the farmers market folks. So these are some of the details we'd kind of like to work out. This MOA came together pretty quickly, and I think as a group we need to sit together and talk about it a little bit more. But bottom line is to have that buy-in from the city commission and from the community that this is the right pathway forward to use this land, so that we can pursue really some permanent fixtures, a permanent greenhouse, and make this the permanent home for farmers market and community garden.
So Jeff, I guess my question would be, would you and the members like to proceed with the MOA as written currently?
So that may be an option. Let me let David weigh in, because he really has some good observations.
Just as we looked at this in the last few days, we came across a few things that are potentially quite problematic from view of the community garden, one being that if they don't move this year, they're still responsible for maintaining and mowing the weeds of the property, and a lot of things that would make sense if they were using it, but would not make sense until they're using it. And there are a couple of other things that are maybe problematic, and we thought perhaps we would ask the commission this evening to table this for one commission meeting, then we could sit down, maybe meet with Scott and meet with, and try and figure out how to address some of the questions we have that aren't resolved right now. We're all for the project, and I think we want to go forward, and the space is a great place for us, and we might have to change our map a little bit in a few things, but I think we'd just like a little bit of time to do that and make sure we're on the same page.
Sure. No, I spoke with Mr. Phillips yesterday and asked him if the city did have some gravel material that could lay out a nice area for farmers market so it could be relocated there this summer, and he thought we did. So I think there's definitely some. I think it can move forward and be a productive thing, and
There's some other considerations
Right.
involved with next year, this year, and how that works. And I think it's all things we can resolve and work forward. It's just a matter of how to do that and make it all fit together.
I mean, I'll make a motion to postpone item E to the next meeting.
Okay, we have a motion to postpone item E till the February 27th meeting. We have a second?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Postponed to the 27th.
There.
I see that we have our guests have arrived, so we will be moving now back to item B. We'll have a presentation of the fiscal year 17 audit reports by RPC CPAs and Consultants, LLP. Mr. Barry. I know, you caught you in between things here.
Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor, and Commission, this is the phase of the annual audit and preparation of financial report that the independent auditors would make their presentation to the Commission and to the public. Prior to this time, we really have not been able to talk about the process in public. Following this presentation, the report will be available. I think it's fair to say we'll have this on the website tomorrow, and so it will be public information. It has gone through the process prescribed by the state auditor. The state auditor, I think, has gone through the financial report that you have fairly closely. We do have the gentleman here. I'll let you introduce yourselves, and Mayor Pro Tem, if we could, I'll turn that over to the gentleman and let you talk about the effort.
Thank you very much. My name is Ben Martinez. I'm an audit manager with RPC. And this is...
I'm Luis Gomez. I'm a senior auditor with RPC, or with CRI now, and I was the auditor in charge of this, both for the complaint unit, RPS, and for the city.
And what's your name again?
Luis.
Luis?
And yes, we're here today to talk about, to present the financial statements to the board. I'm here on behalf of Alan Bowers. He's was the partner on this audit, and he unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, but I'm here to kind of present for him. To go over a quick timeline of the audit, just to show you how the process went. We started with our signed engagement letter back in June, right before year end. We got that signed early on. We began our audit planning in July, getting updates to certain policies, certain procedures. When we were out here in the field was the week of October 2nd. So that's when we were out actually doing our testing, testing transactions, testing balances. And then we went back to our office, we did our review. We started putting together findings and draft financial statements, which were given to the city and to the RPS December 12th. We also had the financial statement draft delivered that day. And the date of our auditor's report was December 13th. And after that, as you mentioned, it was submitted to the state auditor. They have a review and approval process that they have to go through before the audit can be made public and the financial statements can be made public. And we're here today for that board presentation to kind of close out that circle. And at that point, you know, the audit can be public information. So when it comes to your audit, and we actually have 2 audits here, the main things that we do are your auditor's reports. All the, you know, which are a total of about 5 pages out of these, you know, 110 pages for the city and probably about 50 pages for the utility or the public service. And our 5 pages are our auditor's reports, and for both entities, we had an unmodified opinion, which is basically the best opinion available. We were, your financial statements they presented fairly in accordance with accounting principles accepted in the United States. And there were no areas where we couldn't give you an opinion. So none of your balances had any issues where we thought they might be materially misstated. So that resulted for both entities in an unmodified audit opinion. So that's always a good thing. The other report that we have in both of these financial statements is our, they call it a yellow book report because that's the book that we have to perform governmental audits within. And it's a report on internal controls over compliance and other matters, over financial reporting and compliance and other matters. And we don't actually give an opinion in that report, but that's where we have to list your findings. And the findings that have to be included in that report would be if you had a material weakness, which is a deficiency in your controls such that even if the controls are operating, there's still a chance that your financial statements could be somehow materially misstated. We also have to report if there's any material non-compliance. So if you have any grant agreements that you did not comply with, maybe a debt covenant or some other grant agreement that you didn't comply with that had a material effect on your financial statements, we'd also report those here. Those are probably the 2 highest levels of findings in that report, and I'm glad to say that there was neither of those type of findings in this report. The next level down from either a material weakness or material non-compliance would be a significant deficiency, which is the deficiency in controls. It may not rise to the level of a material weakness, but it still merits the Commission's approval or the Commission's attention, and we did not have any of those either. Also included in the state of New Mexico under the New Mexico statutes, we do have to report any instances of non-compliance with laws or regulations or even your own internal policies. It may not rise to those other levels of findings, but in New Mexico, the state law says that we do have to report those. And we did have one of those findings, one finding that we'll go over in a little bit that has to be reported under New Mexico statutes, but we didn't believe that it rose to the level where it could pose a material threat to your financial statement. So that's the level of findings we have to report on. So in addition to an unmodified opinion, possibly not having material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, other material non-compliance, not having those findings, is also a very good sign for your operations here. I'll turn it over to Luis. He'll talk a little bit about your financial statement highlights overall.
So my primary focus with the city and RPS was on the day-to-day and the audit plan. So I got well acquainted with the numbers, and so I have some highlights that I want to point out. So in the statement of net position for the city, we saw an increase in unrestricted cash of approximately $579,000, which went from 6.9 to 7.1 million. And capital assets also made up a significant increase of 2.1 million. Those are 2 really large balances on your statement in net position, as well as on the other side, on the liability side. There were a couple of items that increased it related to the to net pension liability, which increased about $3 million, and this was related to that liability for para. And we also saw post-closure costs for the landfill that decreased about 277,000. And bonds payable and notes payable also decreased by about $1 million. For the component unit, we saw unrestricted cash that decreased about 4.3 million. This was related to some of those insurance recoveries that had been received in the prior year. And then capital assets also increased by 4.7 million. I'm sure you guys are aware with that large construction project related to the power plant. And then major changes in liabilities were the decrease of $368,000 in loans payable, and the increase in the net pension liability also related to that, to the pension, to the para. In terms of the audit itself, there were a couple of areas on the balance sheet where the statement of net position side that we focused a lot of time on. It was related to accounts receivable and capital assets, and it was the same for both the component unit as well as for the city. We focused quite a bit on the receivables because along with that we look at the revenues, and so municipal utilities make up a large part of the operations for the city. So we looked at all of the operations and the revenues related to the Raton Waterworks processes as well as for electric utilities on RPS's side. So we actually performed tests of controls to see how everything was operating. And we performed analysis over the numbers as well, both analytically and by testing certain transactions. On the capital asset side, the books are kept on several different things, so we did quite a bit of work to make sure that those numbers were correct. And on the debt side, we also made sure that all of those balances were recorded properly and that the debt service came through properly. And then on the income statement side, we see that the statement of activities, which reflects your revenues and expenses, saw major changes in revenues, primarily related to operating and capital grants, which was a decrease of 462,000. And on the expense side, they increased about $772,000 roughly for the primary government, which is for the city. And for the component unit, the major changes were the $2.6 million that were not received for the insurance recoveries this year that were in the prior year. And as far as expenses, though, we saw a trend that they kept being consistent from year to year. And again, as I mentioned before, we focused on the controls on both sides to make sure they were operating effectively, looking at the expense side as well for the statement of activity side. So we looked at the processes for disbursements for acquiring any goods or services as well as for debt servicing. And we found a ratio.
Going over the findings, as I said, there were no material weaknesses. Of course, there's always a chance, we don't audit on a absolute basis. We can't look at every transaction. We pretty much have to take up residence if we did that. But we do test work as standards require to make sure that we can say that we did not find any, but that doesn't mean that there isn't the possibility that there's any there. But we can give you reasonable assurance as to what we've seen, and we can say that we didn't have any material weaknesses we noted or any significant deficiencies or material non-compliance. As I said, in the state of New Mexico, there's a zero reporting threshold when it comes to findings. So if we find any minor exceptions that have to do with either state statutes or even internal policies, we do have to report those. We did have one finding related to stale dated checks. There's state statutes that require a check over a year old needs to be voided, and it can be credited back to the fund that it was written from. And there's certain other requirements to that statute that deal with payroll, just to make sure that, if someone doesn't cash a payroll check and it's over a year, they can still get to that because they've earned that. But if there's another check that was cashed or that was written but not cashed for a year, it can be credited back to the fund that it was written from. So that's just a small management item on your bank reconciliations. As we said, we didn't think that posed a material threat to the finances of the city, but we did have to report that as another non-compliance item with the state statute regarding stale dated checks. When it comes to prior year findings, it's always good, we always have to follow up and check up on the progress of those. There were a couple of component unit findings in the prior year, and I'm glad to say that all of those were cleared. There were some missing purchase order requisition forms, and we followed up on that this year. That was a finding that originated in 2015 that has been cleared. We also had some, there was a finding over the backdating of cash disbursements that was also resolved. And there was other non-compliance finding over old meter deposits, which was also resolved. So, you know, the city had just one other non-compliance finding in the component unit. RPS actually had no findings this year, and they resolved their 3 findings. So that's definitely a good reflection on the people doing your day-to-day and in charge of everything. So, you know,
So overall, you know, the severity of the findings were very small. All of the findings on the component unit side were cleared, and so the city's doing really well, and it was great working with all of you guys. Michael and everybody, Sandy over at RPS were very helpful, always very receptive to our comments, and always willing to take us into the office and walk through things. And you know, an audit is not always easy. We ask for a lot. We ask a lot of questions. We ask for a lot of documents. And this year we actually were able to cut down by a whole week. In previous years we did the audit over the course of 2 weeks. This year we were actually able to do the financial statement audit over 1 week for the city, which is really good. And you all were very well prepared. The city was really good with working with us, so we really appreciated that.
Just kind of in closing, I'd like to say, you know, thank you for the opportunity to serve the city and RPS and Raton Waterworks. You know, we appreciate the opportunity to serve, and we're hoping, you know, we're always looking forward to continue working going forward. We value this relationship, and you know, we hope to continue to build on it. One thing that was mentioned when we had our exit conference about back in October, RPC CPAs and consultants actually merged into another firm. So, you know, going under the state audit rule, we published the audit report under RPC's name and letterhead. But going forward, we merged into Carriggs & Ingram, which is a top 20 accounting firm nationwide. But you know, with that, we do want to let you know that our offices here in New Mexico, and even our couple offices in Texas, we just operate now as a business unit within Carriggs & Ingram. So when it comes to your audit, you'll still see the same faces here. You'll still see Luis. You might see myself maybe this year if I'm involved in this one. You'll still see Alan, AJ, the partner on this. All our operations are still the same. We're still, you know, we consider all of the communities we serve in New Mexico, you know, our friends and neighbors. So we definitely want to continue to serve and continue the relationship. But now we also have the support of a much larger entity behind us. So Carriggs & Ingram has a very large, you know, for example, one thing we may not have had access to with RPC was a lot of IT audit and IT support, and IT is kind of the great unknown, you know, all your information technology and all that. And now with Carriggs & Ingram, we've got the backing of a very large IT department. So if those issues confront the city, that's something that we could always help with now in the future. And just hope to continue our relationship. And again, thank you very much for allowing our firm to perform your audit this year, and we look forward to working with you in the future. And if there are any questions, I can answer.
Thank you for the presentation. We appreciate your work. I'll open up to the commission here. Any questions for these gentlemen? Mayor Matz, do you have any questions?
Not at this moment.
All righty. Commissioner Chavez?
No, I just wanted to say that this was a well put together report. It was easy to read. As we went through it, so we appreciate you doing that for us.
Thank you
very much.
Commissioner Giacomo?
My question would be, how do we compare to like the rest of our cities our size? as far as,
It's hard to say comparing city to city, but, with only having one other non-compliance finding, that speaks a lot to the operations going on, because especially with that zero reporting threshold, there's a lot that can end up being reported. If you have a fund that goes over budget by $100, we'd still have to report that. So that means you had the budgetary awareness and wherewithal to make sure that, you did amendments to make sure nothing went over budget. Or if, there's a lot of statutes, travel and per diem that we have to test. And there were no issues with that. So it speaks highly of your day-to-day operations, that with so many of those things, it may not pose a material threat, but you're still keeping them in line such that, we're not having findings to report on those. It definitely speaks highly to the day-to-day operations. So it's hard to make like a one-to-one comparison, but just sort of that as your audit results is definitely, says good things.
thank you.
That's from a financial standpoint too, and we also looked at several compliance requirements with grants and provisions like that. So you guys are doing really well from the financial standpoint as well as compliance with certain items like that.
Good. Commissioner Schuster, any questions?
No, I don't.
Comments?
Appreciate your hard work.
Appreciate the work.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate the work of the city staff as well.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be careful.
Thank you for driving.
Mayor Pro Tem, I think that the city office needs to be really commended on this.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because talking to these gentlemen, this was as good as audit that you can find. And so I think it commends your staff, Michael Ann.
Thank you,
So-
appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Also express those same feelings to the water department and RPS. Staffs were admirable in this.
They were.
So that would bring us to item C, deliberate and act on fiscal year 17 audit report acceptance. Entertain a motion.
I will move to accept the audit reports by RPC, CPAs, and Consultants LLP.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further questions? Michael Ann, could we have a roll call vote on this, please?
Commissioner Schuster,
Yes.
Commissioner Giacomo,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez.
Yes?
Mayor Mance,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Sagata.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Good job, everybody. Item F, deliberate and act on labor management board appointment. Mr. Berry.
Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor and Commission, you'll remember sometime back, the commission had considered changes to the city code of ordinances, specifically dealing with city personnel policies. And we looked at section 28 dealing with collective bargaining. And during that process, which the commission subsequently approved those changes to the ordinance, we noted that the changes would provide for a labor management relation board being added. Now, we said at the time that the personnel ordinance already had provision for a personnel board, but these would be duties that are separate from the personnel board, and they would function independent of the personnel board. And then we subsequently worked on the appointments to that labor management relations board. So if you remember, the commission, according to the ordinance, would act on the recommendation of one member from the city manager, and that person was William Daly, which the commission appointed to the board. And then subsequently, the commission would act on the recommendation of the organized labor units of the city of Raton. They had recommended Sarah Kowalski to the board, and you all had appointed Sarah Kowalski. And then the last piece of this would be that those two individuals would formulate a recommendation to the city commission for appointment of a third person. So they have met, and you have a memorandum in front of you from those two board members, and they are recommending Eric Honeyfield. And as they say in the memo, Eric Honeyfield is has a work history in public administration. He's had a number of work assignments, including in the past with the city of Raton. Eric is born and raised in Raton, Raton native, still has family here, does not reside here currently, but is in Raton frequently with family issues. The ordinance does have provision for per diem if a meeting is necessary. We do not have an item of business for the board, but we are going through the process called for by the ordinance. So with that, I'll answer a question if I can, but you are considering the recommendation of the other two board members.
Any questions for Mr. Berry?
I'd like to make a motion that we agree on the appointment by the Labor Relations Board, Sarah Kowalski and William Daly, and naming Eric Honeyfield.
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second to accept the recommendation of Ms. Kowalski and Mr. Daly for Eric Honeyfield to be a member of the Labor Relations Board. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item G, deliberate and act on Resolution 2018-10, disposal of surplus property, fire department air packs, and senior center two-door freezer. Mr. Berry?
Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor and Commission, we are looking at a two-door freezer that has been in service at the senior center. I understand that to repair this unit would cost approximately the amount of simply replacing the unit. So replacement has taken place. So now we're left with the resolution of the two-door freezer, which currently is on our capital assets list. So the recommendation is to declare that surplus, and we don't believe that it has a value. It would be disposed of. Additionally, you see a list of self-contained breathing apparatus. I do have Chief Espinoza present. I'm going to ask Chief Espinoza to come forward and talk a little about the self-contained breathing apparatus. But I do have a memo here from Chief Espinoza that prior to his comments I'm going to read. Raton Fire and Emergency Services has received a donation from Doñana County. We have received 20 self-contained breathing apparatus. The value of these SCBAs are approximately $5,000 each, for a total value of about $100,000. Before receiving these SCBAs, they have been tested and certified by the manufacturer. The manufacturer is
Scott.
The company is Scott. These SCBAs will replace our current inventory that the manufacturer will no longer service, and they'll replace these older CBAs. And so you see the older ones on the list. So Chief Espinoza, if you would add to those comments.
Mayor, Commissioners, so I was talking with some people there in the state, and they had gotten a grant for Doñana County, and they replaced all of their air packs through the grant. So they had these excess of air packs that they were gonna just pretty much destroy. So I asked them if we could get a few of them. So we pretty much updated all of our old air packs and brought them up to service with newer ones. And I was actually able to put 5 on the shelf for spares for the future, in case one goes down. So it's a pretty big donation from them to us.
Well, that's great.
Cool.
They're complete with face masks and everything?
No, it's just the frame and the pack alone. There was no bottles with them or anything like that. It was just the harness by itself.
Yeah.
That's nice.
I would just also point out on the resolution that it is a cool start freezer, not a kook.
Well,
Although we do have some kooks down there.
I don't know, I pulled the invoice for the original.
And it says kook there.
On their invoice, it says kook, so
I can assure you it says cool, but.
So I'm assuming maybe their invoice is wrong, so.
Yeah, that's
We
fine.
could correct that if it.
It makes no difference to me, I just.
I actually have it on the inventory as cool, K-O-O-L.
That's,
So I'll just correct that.
okay.
We'll go with cool. But yeah, I did see that on the invoices, poop.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other corrections?
None that I'm aware of, none.
Make a motion to approve resolution number 2018-10, disposal of the freezer and of the bottles at the Scott Fire Department.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution to dispose of the surplus property. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item H, deliberate and act on resolution 2018-11, fiscal year 18 budget adjustment number 10. Mr. Berry.
Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor and Commission, I would ask our city treasurer, Michael Ann Antonucci, to make some comments on the budget adjustment as amended and proposed to the commission.
Mayor and Commission, I did want to just point out, I noticed when I was putting this together, it is adjustment number 8, and we had incorrectly put it on the agenda as number 10. So at our last meeting, we approved budget adjustment number 7. So I just wanted to point that out. But the resolution that you do have before you was slightly amended, and I highlighted on your amended resolution. We just changed the wording under the sanitation adjustment. At the last meeting, we did do an adjustment to increase our tire recycling line item, and that was to take funds out of reserve to do that. With this proposed budget adjustment, it is a line item adjustment, so those funds are not coming out of the reserve. So we're proposing to move $10,000 from those 2 line items into the tire recycling so that they can continue their efforts to recycle. I don't know how many tires, Scott, but thousands. I think he has that in his report here coming up.
And I do, but I will go ahead and report on that. We have worked on cleaning up the scrap tire pile that's located at our convenience center since about the first of the year, and we've had numerous trucks loading there. We'll continue that operation for several more days, but when we get done removing scrap tires, we will have removed approximately 16,000 from our property there. Now, we will have remaining out there about 1,500 semi-truck tires, and then several hundred additional heavy equipment tires, tires that may be mounted on a steel wheel that we can't recycle. So we have about 2,000 left, but we will have recycled about 16,000 scrap tires with the funds you see in this budget adjustment.
And the only other adjustment I had was when I did the budget this year, we had some funds remaining in our river stewardship grant that we're spending and closing out that project. So that was $4,738. So I'm just asking that we increase our revenue and expense so that we can close that grant out. And then the other items were just merely line item adjustments. Is there any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2018-11, FY18 budget adjustment number 10. Or number 8, sorry about that.
Sorry, we have a motion. We have a second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second to approve resolution 2018-11, budget adjustment number 8. Is there any further discussion? Michael Ann, could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Giacomo?
Yes.
Commissioner Schuster?
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez?
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Sagata?
Yes.
Mayor Mance?
yes.
The motion carries. Thank you. Item I, City Manager's Report. Mr. Berry.
Mayor Pro Tem, just as a reminder to the commission, the 2018 New Mexico legislature has been in session. They are towards the end of this 30-day session. They're scheduled to adjourn on Thursday, February 15th. Myself and other members of staff and of course the commissioners have attended legislative functions a number of times. specifically Municipal Day sponsored by the Municipal League, which was held February 1st and 2nd. We've had a chance to talk to our elected officials, attend some hearings on bills that we were interested in, and submit our request for capital outlay. So it should not be long, and we'll see how those requests are treated. I would advise the commission that following adjournment, the New Mexico Municipal League does schedule meetings in each district throughout the state, and generally they'll go over a recap of what got accomplished during that legislative meeting. So we're looking at March 19th of 2018. The New Mexico Municipal League District 3 meeting will take place. That will include us. And it'll take place in Santa Rosa at their Blue Hole Conference Center. We'll advise you of that, get you more information on that, but to look out there quite a ways, March 19th, we'll talk about that. Mayor Pro Tem, I would report to the commission and to those present that following our submission of petitions and letters to Sears Holding Corporation regarding the Raton Kmart situation, I did receive a very nice call from Misty at Government Affairs with Sears Holding Corporation. She wanted me to pass along to you all that they had received the petitions, received our letters. They had looked that over very closely. They appreciated our response to them, and she stated in no uncertain terms that the decision would not change, that the Kmart store would close in April as they had planned. And she explained that very difficult environment for a lot of brick and mortar retailers, but specifically Sears Holding Corporation and their Kmart stores. So I expressed I appreciated that she had called and had discussed that with us. And so while that's not the news we were hoping for, I would say that I was really pleased to see the community rally and get together. I think about, I'll ask Dee, but I think more than 1,500 people had signed the petition. I was very pleased to see the efforts of the chamber. There was a great effort in a short amount of time. And so I think there's a positive takeaway from all of this. And I think it's something that hopefully we can build on, and we'll turn the corner as we go forward. But I did want to pass that along to everyone. I had a report on the tires. I would just add to what we had talked about previously, that in the last 3 years, we have disposed of about 50,000 scrap tires. And you remember, under the resolution dealing with fees on scrap tires, most of those we have collected really no fees on. And so we're trying to get an equitable situation where the ratepayers are not just stuck with the fees of disposing of these large volumes of tires. And so that is implemented currently. I have one other item of business, Mayor Pro Tem. I would like to announce the appointment of a new fire chief. The new fire chief is Chris R. Espinoza, who is present tonight. He has served as our interim fire chief since September upon the retirement of Jim Matthews. Chief Espinoza has worked in Raton Fire Department Emergency Services since 1998, very familiar with all phases of our department. Of course, we are a diverse department. We deal with structure fires, wildland fires, rescue operations, running a local ambulance service, and running transfer operations, in addition to whatever else we can just put on the fire department. And so they also deal with planning and zoning, code enforcement. It's a very diverse department. I want to say welcome, congratulations to Chief Espinoza. Very excited about this appointment. So.
Congratulations.
That's all I have, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Is there any other comments from the commission at this time? We do have one more thing. Mr. Berry's not finished.
I did not have this in my notes, but we would like to bring forward some information in regard to the municipal election. I would ask Michael and Ed Tanucci to provide some information to the public about deadlines regarding the, or the schedule regarding the election.
Okay.
Michael Ed?
Thank you. Yes, we just wanted to take this opportunity to remind everybody, Election Day is March 6th. We do have sample ballots that are available here at City Hall. They're also at the library and at the senior center. There is also a sample ballot for review on the city's website. Applications for absentee ballots, we can mail those from our office, so if anybody's interested, they can contact City Hall. The deadline for us to issue absentee ballots is March 2nd, which is the Friday before the election. We can accept completed absentee ballots delivered by mail or in person by the voter casting the absentee ballot, also by a member of the voter's immediate family or by a caregiver of the voter. And they can return those absentee ballots up until 7 p.m. the night of the election, March 6th. We are starting early voting tomorrow, which is February 14th, and that will end also on March 2nd, the Friday before the election. So voters that are wishing to vote prior to the election day can come to the city clerk's office during our regular business hours, which are 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And they can file an application and actually cast their vote early on a voting machine in our office. So we just encourage everybody to get out and exercise your right to vote.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Barry?
That's all we have, Mayor Pro Tem.
That's it. Anything else? Anything else before this commission tonight? We are adjourned. Thank you.